Okay, hello, welcome to a first impressions on a palette that I should have done a first impressions long ago on. It's also a super old palette, but honestly, I just want to do a first impressions with this, so we are going to the Gemini 2 from Melt. Now, I got this on Black Friday, and is that true? Yes, I did. And I actually haven't used it because I thought that I had like mold in the shadow schmood, but I like rubbed it away and no white spots have reappeared. And I honestly think it's fine. There weren't a lot to begin with. It's not worth it to me to try to like contact melt and replace this palette based on that, particularly because they haven't developed in any other shade or reappeared in this shade. I mean, it's fine. I'm not too stressed about it. But to each their own, whatever. It's legit not worth it to me. But let's just do some live swatches and then we'll do a little look. There's only 10 shades in this palette, so it should be a relatively short first impressions, but you know my love for the Gemini original and my love for Melt Shadows, so I cannot wait to dig into this. So it does pain me to ruin the imprint, but I'm going to just start with the swatches. Bella is the first shade, a like peachy rosy shade, like a peachy pink. Ladylike is a light rose. I would say similar in depth, but a little bit more rosy. Sweetheart is another rosy shade. A little bit deeper and a little bit more pink. More of kind of like a true rosy, almost leaning mauve. Ooh, Gemelas. Not sure how to say that. Is a even deeper rosy shade. Lovesick is a red, almost like a burgundy kind of red. Schmood is a red metallic. Looks very similar to a shade in the Waiting Room palette from Melt, like almost a black based shimmer with a red shine. Looks Queen is a dark purpley matte. Mateo is a deep metallic green. That's really pretty actually. Again, like a blackened green. And then Boy Mum, which it's funny, is a dark grungy green, which I love. And then Almond Eyes is the last shade, which is a little bit of a lighter olive green. So this is the palette swatched out. I really love it, and I think it complements the original Gemini so well. I love the combination of the olivey greens with the rose tones. So now I'm going to do some eye swatches and up close swatches and then do a little look. Okay, hello. Welcome to the eye swatching portion of this Gemini 2 Melt Cosmetics video. If I sound stuffy and my eyes are slightly puffy, it's because number one, I'm coming down with a cold. Number two, I have been crying. So let's just move right along. Okay, I've primed my eyes using the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Amplifying Eye Primer. It's slightly tacky and it doesn't have any like color to it. The shade descriptions I'm going to take off of Sephora just for reference because Melt doesn't have any shade descriptions on their website. And for shimmers, there's only 2 shimmers in the palette, so it's not the biggest, deal, but I start with it dry, then I will wet my brush, and then I will use my finger just to kind of get every typical method of application we can get. Okay, so starting with the first matte, this is the shade Bella, which is described as a light coral, although I don't really feel like this is a coral. To me, this is honestly more of a like peachy, light peachy pink. Yeah, so I guess this is a light coral, a light peachy pink matte, really pigmented as per usual with Melt. And then we have the shade Ladylike, which is described as a peachy beige, which I think is very accurate. A peachy beige this is, and honestly Melt mattes are just a dream to work with. Okay, so we have Bella and Ladylike. Okay, next up is the shade Sweetheart, which is described as a soft terracotta, which I think is absolutely incorrect. This is not a terracotta, it's not orange enough to be a terracotta, it's like a light rose. Maybe I shouldn't even be using these shade descriptions, but anyway. Again, beautiful, opaque. Next up, the shade Gemelis, I think is how you say it, not sure, which is described as a rich auburn. Sure, maybe, I guess, maybe not quite so as orange as I would imagine an auburn to be, but okay. It's kind of like a rosy brown to me, but honestly, these are some of the best mattes that I've eye swatched in so long. I love Melt so much. So we have Sweetheart and Gemelis. Okay, next up we have the shade Lovesick, which is described as a saturated sangria, which, okay, that I will agree with. pretty. What a good shade. And then Schmood is the first shimmer in the palette, one of the two. It's described as a maroon with a fiery shift, which is perhaps a stretch. I feel like it's honestly just like a burgundy shimmer with a blackened base. So pretty typical of Melt in terms of like finish. It's pretty just a metallic. It's not sparkly or anything, really opaque and smooth. Now I'm gonna wet this just with water, honestly. It's not gonna foil too much, to be honest, because it's not like so metallic. It'll get a little bit brighter, and then I'll use my finger, but again, the finish really isn't gonna change that much. So we have Lovesick and Schmood. Okay, next up we have the shade Looks Queen. Sorry if you can hear my roommate's Vanderpump Rules in the background. This is described as a deep wine, which I would agree with. Delicious. And then we have the second shimmer, which is Mateo. This is described as a mossy green with lime shims. Again, to me this is kind of just a blackened like mossy green. Rather, I don't really see any particular like special shimmers. There are like shimmer particles in here, but I wouldn't say they're like any distinct like lime color, you know, if that makes sense. It's kind of just the same like shade as the rest of the shadow. So starting with this dry. Wetting it. And then with my finger. So this definitely has more sparkle to it than the other shimmer. So we have Looks Queen and Mateo. Okay, next up we have the shade Boy Mum, which is described as a smoky olive brown, which I think is very accurate. Look how opaque this is. Oh my god, these mattes. And then we have Almond Eyes, which is described as a cool moss green. Again, I think that's pretty accurate. And again, oops. And again, such a good green. So nice. I love how muted these are. So this is Boy Mum and Almond Eyes. And this concludes the eye swatch portion of this video. Okay, so I want to do a little bit of a rounded shape, but I want to start with a black first, just because that's how I prefer to do my looks, in that shape, starting with the black. Anyway, I'm just going to take the shade Bonnie from the original Gemini palette, but you don't have to do this. And you could use any black. So I'm just going to like really concentrate this just in my outer corner. Really try to keep it like low and rounded, just to like just create the like a little bit of depth, but I don't want anything too crazy. Especially because the mattes in this palette are already like super deep. So actually, you know what? I'm gonna do this and then I'm gonna do highlight and blush, because I want to do my lower lash line at the same time. So I'm gonna do that and then I'll be right back to keep going and actually use the palette. Okay, so I don't know, my goal, my idea is to do partly red, partly green. Ooh. So I'm gonna start with the shade Looks Queen and just kind of work from there. I'm just basically gonna go, I think, like on top of this black and just use it to blend this black out. And then I'm gonna take the shade Boy Mum, the deeper of the two matte greens, with the same brush. I just wiped it off. And I'm going to put this in the inner part of my crease. It's honestly it's just like a little pop of green, I think, that I want right in the inner part of my eye. I'm not gonna try to like blend them too much together because I don't want them to get muddy, but it's gonna be pretty deep and grungy anyway, so I'm not so concerned about it getting too muddy. And then I'm going to take Lovesick, this red, and blend the outer, like the red part out some more. And then I'm going to take Almond Eyes and blend out the darker green in the front. And then I'm going to take Sweetheart and blend the edges of the outer part of my eyes out. So far the mattes are performing just like Melt Mattes. Beautifully stunning. Beautifully stunning. I almost feel like they're a little bit more powdery, like kick-up-y, than what I feel like I'm used to, but maybe I'm just making that up in my mind. But again, that doesn't really bother me. I personally don't really care if shadows are powdery. And then just to help this blend a little bit, I'm gonna just take my face powder and just lightly blend the edges out of the front part of my eye, just so I can mostly keep it within this palette. And so I just get a little bit better blend. I don't know how noticeable, it's pretty noticeable. I don't know, I really like this so far. Now I'm going to take the shade Schmood, this red metallic shade, all over my lid, but I'm going to first use some NYX glitter primer. And put this just all over my lid. And then take Schmood and put it all over my lid. And then I'm just going to take a little bit more of Boy Mum and blend the edges in the front. And then taking a touch more of Almond Eyes, doing the same thing. And then I'm going to take Looks Queen and blend this into Schmood on the outer part of my lid. And then I'm going to take Schmood on my lid and intensify it with my finger. I mean, this is not really that foiled. It's kind of almost like a satin, which is pretty standard for melt, honestly. And then finally, I'm going to take Mateo, this metallic green. I'm going to spray this and then I'm going to put it right on the inner part of my lower lash line. And then maybe I'll take the tiniest touch of almond eyes and just blend this out a little bit. And then for my inner corner and my brow bone, there's really nothing in the palette to use. So I'm going to take the shade Hermetic from Shine by SD. This is from the original Duality collection. And this is where I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to finish up the rest of my face, do my hair, show you the finished look, and my initial thoughts on the palette. Okay, and this is the finished look. On my lips, I have the Unearthly Cosmetics Satin Liquid Lipstick in the shade Mandy. I've been waiting for a moment to use this, and I felt like this look, it works with this look. I really love the way this came out. I think it's super grungy, and I love that, and I love this look, and I love this palette. I have no regrets on purchasing this. I think it's beautiful. I love the depth. I love this shade Looks Queen. Honestly, I mean, I've used pretty much almost every shade in some capacity except for the shades Bella, Ladylike, and Gemillis? Not sure. So these three shades, I imagine, if I had to guess, they would work in a similar way as the rest of the mattes, but I don't fully know. I guess we'll also see in my eye swatches because I haven't done those yet, but so far, so great. I mean, it's an older palette, so I'm not gonna like ramble on too much about it, but it is like typical melt quality, and the shimmers, as per usual with melt, are not the most amazing ever. Particularly the shade Mateo is a little bit sparklier. I think it's gonna look really nice all over the lid. This shade Schmood is like a metallic, almost satiny shade. Pretty typical of melt. My one complaint is that their shadows, I don't feel, or their shimmer shadows are like necessarily on par with what everyone else is kind of coming out with nowadays, but not everyone loves super sparkly, shimmery shimmers, so to each their own. And I think it makes a beautiful companion, okay, let me hold this up, companion palette with the original Gemini. I think it's just so beautiful, and I have no regrets. And as with all melt palettes, pretty much, I would probably not buy a melt palette full price because I think this is almost $80 Canadian, and as much as I love Melt's formula, I don't know that this 10 pan eyeshadow palette is worth $80. That being said, you know how much I love my 10 pan Pat McGrath palette, which is close to $200, but it's Pat McGrath, you're getting like special shades and all that kind of stuff. I think Melt is a little overpriced, if I'm going to be completely honest, but they're honestly one of my favorite matte formulas, so I always kind of look out for them when they have sales and stuff, and this is no exception, and the packaging is stunning. So beautiful. And that is all that I have to say. Really like it, really like the look, can't wait to play with it more. So happy to have it in my collection. And that's all she wrote. Hopefully this was helpful or interesting. You know, sometimes I think it is fun and useful to review and use palettes that released a long time ago because it's not like makeup disappears after it's released. And so if you are curious on my thoughts or wanted to see a look using this palette from me. Here you go. Let me know if you have this palette, what your thoughts on Melt's formula are. I'm always so interested to know. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I would love to see you in my next one. Bye.